younger men desperately want from older women that has nothing to do with experience, wisdom, or maturity. And it's not what you think. It's not about being a mentor. It's not about sharing life lessons. It's not about offering stability or playing the sophisticated older woman role that everyone assumes they're looking for. In fact, what I'm about to reveal will probably surprise you because it goes against everything we've been told about what attracts younger men to older women. After years of observing these relationships and studying what actually makes them thrive, I discovered something that most women completely miss, something so counterintuitive that when you hear it, you might initially resist it. If you've ever wondered why some older women effortlessly captivate younger men while others find themselves friend-zoned or seen as maternal figures, this will change everything. Because what younger men secretly crave has nothing to do with what you can teach them or how put together your life appears. The women who truly magnetize younger men understand something that others overlook entirely. They know that beneath all the assumptions about age gaps and generational differences lies a much simpler, more primal truth. A truth that has nothing to do with being older and everything to do with being alive in a way that most people, regardless of age, have forgotten how to be. What I'm about to share might make you question everything you thought you knew about attraction across age differences, because the secret isn't in what you offer as an older woman, it's in what you allow yourself to receive. Do you know what happens in the mind of a younger man when he meets an older woman who truly captivates him? It's not what most people imagine. He's not thinking about her life experience or her emotional maturity. He's not calculating how much she can and teach him or how stable she might make his life. Instead, something much more primitive and powerful is happening. He's responding to an energy that has become increasingly rare in his world. An energy that has nothing to do with age and everything to do with a quality that most women inadvertently suppress the moment they become conscious of dating someone younger. Let me tell you about Sarah. She's 47, divorced for 3 years, and recently started exploring connections with men outside her usual age range. When she met Jake, who's 29, the chemistry was undeniable. But within weeks, something shifted. Not because Jake lost interest, but because Sarah began unconsciously withholding the very thing that had drawn him to her in the first place. You see, when Sarah first met Jake, she was in her element. She was playful, spontaneous, fully present in the moment. She laughed easily, spoke her mind without filtering, and moved through the world with a kind of unguarded authenticity that took his breath away. But the moment she realized he was interested and started thinking about their age difference, everything changed. She began editing herself, measuring her words, calculating her responses, and in doing so, she unknowingly shut down the very energy that had made her irresistible. Here's what most women don't realize. Younger men aren't drawn to older women because they want someone more serious, more controlled, or more mature in the traditional sense. They're drawn to them because they're hoping to find someone who has moved beyond the games, beyond the pretense, beyond the exhausting performance that characterizes so many interactions in the modern dating world. What they're craving is genuine presence, raw authenticity, the rare experience of being with someone who has stopped performing and started simply being. But here's the tragic irony. The moment most older women realize a younger man is interested, they immediately slip into performance mode. They start trying to be what they think he wants instead of remaining what drew him in the first place. Think about this for a moment. In a world where everyone is constantly curating their image, filtering their thoughts, and performing versions of themselves, imagine meeting someone who has transcended all of that. Someone who speaks from their truth, not from what they think you want to hear. Someone who responds from their genuine feelings, not from what they calculate will get the best reaction. That's what younger men are really seeking. Not a teacher, not a mother figure, not even necessarily someone more emotionally intelligent. They want someone who has remembered how to be real in a world that has largely forgotten. What I'm about to share might challenge everything you believe about what makes an older woman attractive to a younger man. Because it's not about having your life figured out. It's not about financial independence or career success. It's not even about emotional stability, though these things certainly don't hurt. It's about something much more elusive and infinitely more powerful. It's about a quality that I can only describe as aliveness. Not youthfulness, not vitality in the traditional sense, but a deep, embodied aliveness that radiates from someone who has stopped holding back and started showing up fully to their own life. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine two women, both in their 40s. The first has achieved everything she set out to accomplish. She's financially secure, emotionally stable, and has wisdom born from experience. But there's a duet, ardidness to her, a careful quality that comes from years of protecting herself. She speaks thoughtfully, acts responsibly, and presents herself as someone who has it all together. The second woman might have faced more challenges, might still be figuring things out, but there's something radically different about her energy. She's undefended, open. When she laughs, it's from her belly. When she speaks, you feel her passion. When she moves through the world, there's a sense that she's fully inhabited her own skin. Which woman do you think would captivate a younger man more powerfully? If you guess the second, you're beginning to understand what younger men truly crave. They're not looking for someone who has eliminated all uncertainty from their life. They're looking for someone who has made peace with uncertainty while remaining vibrantly alive within it. I remember working with a client named Elena. At 52, she had built an impressive career, raised two children as a single mother, and by all external measures, had her life completely together. But she was mystified by her lack of success in dating younger men. They seemed interested initially, but always seemed to drift away after a few dates. When I observed Elena in social situations, I immediately understood the problem. She had become so focused on appearing stable and put together that she had forgotten how to be spontaneous, so concerned with being responsible that she had lost touch with her sense of playfulness, so determined to prove her worth through her achievements that she had stopped allowing people to see her heart. The transformation began when Elena started reconnecting with parts of herself she had put away in service of being a responsible adult. She started dancing again, something she hadn't done in years. She began saying yes to invitations that felt exciting but impractical. She allowed herself to be silly, to laugh at things that struck her as funny without worrying about whether it was appropriate. And something magical happened. The younger men in her social circle began responding to her completely differently. Not because she had become less mature, but because she had become more alive. You see, what Elena discovered is what every woman who successfully connects with younger men eventually learns. They're not seeking someone who has transcended all emotion and spontaneity in service of being mature. They're seeking someone who has integrated their life experience with their essential aliveness. They want to be with someone who can be present for deep conversations, but also break into spontaneous laughter. Someone who can offer wisdom when asked, but also admit when they don't have all the answers. Someone who has learned from their mistakes, but hasn't let those lessons close their heart. This is the energy that younger men find irresistible in older women. Not the energy of someone who has everything figured out, but the energy of someone who remains open to figuring it out together. Here's where most older women make a critical error that pushes younger men away, often without ever realizing it. They assume that their value lies in what they can provide rather than in who they are when they're not providing anything at all. The moment an older woman starts dating a younger man, she often slips into one of several counterproductive roles. She becomes the wise counselor, offering unsolicited advice about his career, his friendships, his life decisions, or she becomes the nurturing caretaker, trying to solve his problems and smooth his path. Or she becomes the impressive achiever, constantly highlighting her accomplishments and independence as if auditing for the role of worthy partner. But here's what she doesn't realize. By stepping into these roles, she's answering a question he never asked and solving a problem he doesn't have. Let me tell you about Rebecca, a 45-year-old successful attorney who couldn't understand why her relationship with a 31-year-old man named Marcus kept feeling forced and unnatural. Every conversation seemed to turn into her giving him advice about his startup company. Every date became an opportunity for her to demonstrate her sophistication and worldliness. Every interaction felt like a performance where she was trying to prove her value. Marcus eventually told her something that changed her entire perspective. He said, "Rebecca, I don't need you to fix my life or impress me with yours. What drew me to you was the way you lit up when you talked about things you were passionate about, the way you listened not to give advice, but just to understand, the way you were completely yourself without trying to be anyone else." This is the insight that most women miss. Younger men aren't attracted to older women because they want to be taken care of or impressed. They're attracted because they're hoping to experience something that's become increasingly rare in their dating life. Genuine connection with someone who isn't performing a role. Think about the dating landscape that younger men navigate. It's filled with people who are constantly trying to present their best selves, to curate perfect images, to say the right things and play the right games. In that context, meeting someone who has moved beyond all of that performance is like finding an oasis in the desert. But the cruel irony is that the moment most older women realize they have a younger man's attention, they immediately begin performing harder than anyone. They start trying to justify their worth, to prove they belong, to demonstrate all the ways they can add value to his life. And in doing so, they lose the very quality that attracted him in the first place, their authentic, unguarded presence. I've observed this pattern countless times. A woman will tell me about the early stages of meeting a younger man, describing how natural and effortless everything felt. They would talk for hours about everything and nothing. They would laugh until their sides hurt. They would lose track of time because they were so present with each other. And then, inevitably, something shifts. The woman becomes aware that this younger man is interested, and suddenly she's no longer just being herself. She's trying to be the right version of herself for him. She starts censoring her stories because she worries they'll make her seem too old. She begins offering solutions to problems he mentions because she thinks that's what he wants from an older woman. She starts highlighting her independence and success because she believes that's what will keep his interest. But what actually happens is that she loses him, not because he's lost interest in older women, but because he's lost interest in the performance she's suddenly putting on. The women who maintain lasting connections with younger men understand something crucial. Their appeal lies not in what they can do for these men, but in who they are when they're not trying to do anything at all. They understand that genuine attraction isn't built on utility. It's built on authentic connection. An authentic connection requires presence, vulnerability, and the courage to be seen as you truly are, rather than as you think you should be. What if I told you that the quality younger men find most irresistible in older women is something that has nothing to do with age, experience, or wisdom, and everything to do with a way of being that most people, regardless of their age, struggle to embody? This quality is so powerful that when a younger man encounters it in an older woman, it doesn't matter what she looks like, what she does for a living, or how much money she has. He becomes captivated at a level that transcends logic and enters the realm of magnetic attraction. The quality I'm talking about is presence, not just being physically present, but being emotionally, spiritually, and energetically present, being so fully inhabited in your own skin, so completely at home with yourself, that others feel safe to be equally present with you. This might sound simple, but it's actually incredibly rare. Most people are constantly living slightly outside themselves, either lost in thoughts about the past, anxious about the future, or performing some version of who they think they should be in the moment. True presence means being right here, right now, as exactly who you are, without apology or pretense. Let me tell you about Caroline. At 49, she had been through a difficult divorce, struggled with financial challenges, and was still figuring out what she wanted from her life. By conventional standards, she wasn't the obvious choice for a successful 32-year-old entrepreneur named David, who had his pick of accomplished women his own age. But there was something about Caroline that David couldn't shake. When she listened, she really listened, not just waiting for her turn to speak, but genuinely absorbing what he was sharing. When she laughed, it was unguarded and infectious. When she talked about her struggles, she didn't minimize them or dress them up. She just spoke truthfully about her experience. Most importantly, Caroline never tried to impress David. She didn't list her accomplishments or try to prove her worth. She didn't offer unsolicited advice or try to solve his problems. She simply showed up as herself, flawed, real, and completely present. And David found this absolutely magnetic. In a world where most of his interactions felt performative and calculated, Caroline's genuine presence was like a breath of fresh air. She made him feel seen and accepted in a way that allowed him to drop his own guard and be equally authentic. This is the secret that successful older women understand. Younger men aren't looking for perfection or performance. They're looking for presence. They want to be with someone who has stopped trying to be anyone other than who they truly are. But here's what makes this even more powerful. When you're truly present with someone, you give them permission to be present too. You create a space where both people can drop their masks and connect from a place of authentic truth. And that kind of connection is intoxicating regardless of age. The tragedy is that most women, the moment they realize a younger man is interested, immediately abandon on their presence and slip into performance mode. They start trying to be impressive rather than being present. They begin calculating their responses rather than responding authentically. They stop inhabiting themselves fully and start trying to inhabit some idealized version of who they think he wants. And in doing so, they lose the very quality that drew him to them in the first place. True presence requires courage. It requires the willingness to be seen as you truly are rather than as you think you should be. It means showing up with your imperfections, your uncertainties, your genuine responses rather than your carefully crafted ones. But when you have the courage to be truly present, something magical happens. You become irresistible, not because you're perfect, but because you're real. Not because you have all the answers, but because you're genuinely engaged with the questions. Not because you're performing some idealized version of yourself, but because you're courageously inhabiting the truth of who you are. This is what younger men are secretly craving in older women. Not someone who has transcended all uncertainty and emotion, but someone who has made peace with uncertainty while remaining fully alive within it. Not someone who has become invulnerable, but someone who has learned to be vulnerable with wisdom. When you embody this kind of presence, age becomes irrelevant. What matters is the quality of connection you're capable of creating, the depth of authenticity you're willing to share, and the courage you have to be seen as you truly are. What I'm about to share with you might be the most important insight in this entire conversation because it reveals not just what younger men want, but how any woman can embody the quality that makes her irresistible to any man at any age. The transformation I'm talking about isn't about becoming someone different. It's about remembering who you were before you learned to hide parts of yourself in service of being acceptable, appropriate, or impressive. Think back to a time in your life when you felt most alive, most authentically yourself. Maybe it was in your 20s when you felt fearless and unguarded. Maybe it was during a period of your life when you felt free to express yourself without calculation. Maybe it was in moments when you forgot to be self-conscious and just fully engaged with whatever you were experiencing. That version of you, that alive, authentic, present version, is what younger men find irresistible. Not because she's young, but because she's unguarded. Not because she's naive, but because she's not performing. The women who successfully attract and maintain relationships with younger men haven't learned new tricks or adopted new strategies. They've simply remembered how to access parts of themselves that they had unconsciously put away. Let me tell you about Maria. At 54, she felt completely disconnected from her own aliveness. Years of focusing on career advancement, raising children, and managing a difficult marriage had taught her to suppress her spontaneous impulses, to calculate her responses, and to present herself as serious and responsible at all times. When she started therapy after her divorce, her therapist asked her a simple question: when was the last time you did something just because it brought you joy, without worrying about whether it was practical or appropriate? Maria couldn't remember. The journey back to her authentic self began with small experiments. She started taking dance classes, something she had loved in college but abandoned as impractical. She began saying yes to invitations that felt exciting, even if they seemed slightly irresponsible. She allowed herself to laugh at things she found funny without worrying about whether others would find them appropriate. And something remarkable happened. Not only did she start feeling more alive and engaged with her own life, but people began responding to her differently. Younger men who had previously seen her as attractive but distant began gravitating toward her with genuine interest and excitement. The change wasn't in how she looked or what she accomplished. The change was in her energy, her presence, her willingness to be authentically herself rather than some carefully constructed version of who she thought she should be. This is the transformation that changes everything, the decision to stop performing acceptability and start embodying authenticity, the choice to prioritize being real over being impressive, the courage to show up as you are rather than as you think others want you to be. But here's what makes this transformation so powerful.